Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me? How's the volume? Great. Well, such a pleasure to have everyone here this afternoon on a Sunday afternoon. We welcome you. I know some of you traveled a great distance. Thank you for that. My name is Tim Bilger. I'm the Vice President of Development for the Swedenborg Foundation. I know a good number of you. I've made a few new friends in the course of today's event and leading up to today's event, so it's an absolute pleasure having one here. First and foremost, I want to thank our hosts, Luciano Asunco, who's in the back here. He and his wife, Veronica, were our host. Thank you so much. It is greatly appreciated. I also would acknowledge Kay Lermit, who is a member of the Board of Trustees in the foundation. Thank you, Kay. Kay may win the award for coming the furthest. I'm not sure. We have to. Well, actually, Christy. Where's Christy? Okay, it's a tie. Maybe it's close because you're from Rhode Island originally, right? So anyway, so I want to thank everyone. A bit of housekeeping. You probably found the restrooms in the back. We're going to be doing a drawing for a few items in just a little bit. So everyone have a ticket? Red ticket. So we'll be doing a drawing for a couple fun things in a little bit, including registrations for our upcoming Off the Left Eye Experience, which is a multi-day event that we'll have in Bryn Athyn, Pennsylvania in June 24th through the 26th. So stay tuned for that. We'll do a little fun things toward the end of that. During the course of this afternoon, and even later on, if it doesn't work out during the course of your time here, we'd love for other folks to hear about why you're a supporter, why you're here today. You know, what brought you here today? A good number of you are donors. So first and foremost, I want to thank you for your financial support of being part of this organization. But we have an opportunity, if you're so inclined, to record maybe a few thoughts you might have relating to why you're a friend of the organization, why you're a member of the organization or a donor or both, or just have an intriguement with what we're about. Maybe you just found us recently online and you're learning about what we do and what we're about. You're going to hear a little bit more today, of course. A lot of today, aside from providing some updates to you, is also to provide you an opportunity to ask questions. You know, what questions that might come to mind? We've already had a couple that have been submitted to us, but you know, what questions do you have about what it is that we do, what we are doing, what we maybe have planned in the future? We'd love for you to ask those questions, and Curtis will be answering a good number of those, as he does so often. So, yes. But first and foremost, we wanted just to share a bit of information with you. So, the mission may seem like something that's not all that exciting, but it is to us. But the mission of the foundation, first and foremost, is to foster an affirmative, informed, and increasingly broad engagement with the theological message disclosed by Emanuel Swedenborg. That has been the mission of this organization for 170 plus years. And we have, over the course of time, learned that at the core remains the focus, and we have evolved in how we go about fulfilling that mission over time. Some of that you'll hear about today, but that remains the focus. What is Off the Left Eye? A number of you certainly would be familiar with the name Off the Left Eye. And just to show you a bit more about this, and I'm probably blocking you, I'm sorry about that, Sheena. We dig into Emanuel Swedenborg's writings to learn more about the spiritual backdrop of the life that we're living, and then we work hard to craft a narrative to share with what we learn using visual tools of animations, illustrations, diagrams, delivering the concepts in an entertaining, enlightening, and uplifting way. And if you've seen our content on YouTube in particular, our live shows and so forth, you've seen many examples of that. Our approach. We craft our messaging in the realms of both writing and execution. So we combine it through the scholarships of Swedenborg's works, his writings, carefully shaping the narrative content, high-quality art, graphic design, and production technology, all the latest technologies, and a current awareness of our audience interests, creating a vibrant, relevant, and deep programming to support people in their lives. Our community. You are a part of our community. It's one of the most important aspects of the message today from my vantage point. You are a big part of our community. We feel that, in part, you're here, and you've made the effort to come here today. We are constantly looking at ways to increase and broaden our community. And I've been with the organization about 4.5 years now, and what has amazed me during the course of time is how broad and diverse our community is. Age, demographics, and it's been absolutely remarkable to me. And it's even represented in the room today. And I love the fact that we have been able to and continue to be able to reach individuals from all walks of life, and which is a big part of our effort and our focus. But we are more than just videos, obviously, and that is a big piece of what we do. A moderation team that you'll hear about a bit more, and you might have questions. We have a team of people who actually answer questions, some of which you'll ask today, but we answer questions on a regular basis that are shared with us through individuals watching our content. They may find us on an internet search and have questions that come up that might be connected directly to aspects of things that are going on in their own lives. We have a team of people that actually answer those questions on a regular basis, and I'll give you a metric here in a minute about what that means. Our goal is for you to feel the love and support inherent in our content. No matter what the avenue through which you engage with us, as our hope that your content may bring comfort to the suffering, peace to the unsettled, and offer tools to help overcome spiritual hardships. No matter your cultural or religious background, you're welcome here, and we hope to find knowledge, love, and support you desire. That's at the core of what we're about. 123,000 subscribers. YouTube, the YouTube channel which we have, which is really where most our content resides, our YouTube channel. Last year, we eclipsed 100,000 subscribers, and we received a silver award from YouTube channel, which is a big deal to us. And thank you. And it was through all the hard work from a number of people in the room, including Matt Childs, who is in the back there on camera. Matt is a major part of our production team, and he is really a part of why we are successful what we do with our subscriber base. And we are now to over 100, and that's a dated number, because I think now we're higher than that. Way higher is what it's. So way higher. Think about this next statement here. 4.2 million hours watched on YouTube. We did the math recently, and as you can see at the bottom, there's over 479 years worth of viewing of our content online. That's just a phenomenal number. It's hard to wrap my head around that when I think about that. Total views, 30.7 million views, which means somebody goes to one of our site, they look at one of our pieces of content, that's a view, 30.7 million. This is even more important. 184,886 times somebody chose from watching a piece of content typically to share it with somebody else, a loved one, somebody they know, somebody that they felt they really wanted to also experience what they were learning about and what they had just watched. And that's a notable number. Comments. Mentioned that we have a moderation team a few minutes ago. Those are individuals that on a daily basis are answering questions on all the time. We have answered over 237,000 comments over the course of time. And we say almost all of them, pretty much 99 to 100% is what I think we can comfortably say. And that's okay. So, for further ado, I would like to bring Curtis up. So during the course of time, as we ask you have questions and we get into the question piece, we have a microphone which we'll be glad to bring to you, and then we'll kind of control the comments that way.
Do you know why we answer all the comments that we get? That's actually very unusual for a YouTube channel. I'll have other YouTube channel heads say, "Why do you do that?" It stems from back when we started. We actually started on Facebook, and I remember when the very first comment came in from someone, and I said to myself, somebody wants to talk about Swedenborg. This is incredible. Of course I answered their comment. And of course we answered the next one. And that has stayed with us. I mean, our team is full of people who have had Swedenborg's writings change their life, not just in the past, but constantly change their life. Just today, hopefully someone will ask a question that gets me to talk about this more. But just today, when I was waiting to come here, I was reading New Jerusalem in the index to the section on charity. It's everybody's favorite part, right? And he was just talking about what it is to make caring for others the center of your life. And I couldn't believe that there's such amazing things written down. And it just seemed so practical and so inspiring. So we're so excited about Swedenborg's writings, and we would never want somebody to be looking for answers and not get them. So that's why we're doing that. But that's like, it's just like a couple of digits on a screen. It's not, like, it's a big deal, but it's hard to really register what that is. So that's why it's so great to get to meet you here today. Because just like I've had a couple people come here and say, I see you on the computer all the time, but you don't see me. Well, I see the views in your comments all the time, but I don't see you. So this is really good to get to meet people and to hear about the impact that we're having. So that's why we answer every question. And we don't want to break that streak we're trying to think of what would be a good program for today. And I thought we do right now on the YouTube channel, we have a Q&A program every Wednesday that we call Quensday. Is that clever or is it not? Okay. Well, we're sort of on the fence about that. And so it's just a time where we just get to hear what's on people's minds and answer any questions. Since you all took the time to come here, I would love it if there's anything either about the business of how we operate or about the ideas and the content and what's in the writings that you want to ask. Let's do it. And if we only have 2 or 3 questions, then that's all that we'll do. I know we have one to start because it was emailed to Tim. So I'm going to start with that, and you can get a sense of whether I do a good job answering this or not. And if it's not, then you don't have to ask any more questions. Okay, so okay. Tim, what's our first question today?
Our first question. I recently took part in a spiritual gifts workshop at a local church that I attend. The material used Bible passages and questions. The leader stated that we made a mistake if we think that the Bible is about our spiritual growth, because its primary purpose is about our role in helping to build the Lord's church on earth. It was then that I lost interest. I didn't say anything, but my new church faith felt challenged. Was my reaction too strong?
So one of the things that I've learned through getting online and interacting with all these people and through the team interacting with all these people is that you never know exactly what somebody means by what they say. We will have people who come in and start with a really hostile sounding comment. And through the miracle of the patience and grace of the people who are on our moderating team, we try to universally adopt a non-defensive, friendly stance. Even if we have to take a minute and deep breath behind the computer, we come out and we say, "Oh, well, that's interesting that you think Curtis's hair looks bad. Why? What makes you say that?" And usually it's something more substantive than that. It may be something like, "What the message that you're spreading is garbage," or "There's no God," or something like that. And through meeting that with charitable curiosity, you can find that a few interactions later, they're saying, "Well, I'm going to go watch more videos." And what they were, it seemed like they were saying initially is not really what's in their heart. And so that's one side of it. But then also with terminology. I mean, this question is about this minister that this person was watching talked about the Bible's not about your spiritual growth; it's about building God's kingdom. And so, or building God's church on earth. And so, do we back off because that's not what Swedenborg says? Swedenborg says it's all about our regeneration, which is spiritual growth. Well, you don't know exactly what he means by building the kingdom. So, I would say that if I've learned anything from all these interactions, it's like really make sure you know what the person means before you react. And that's really the sum total of what we've been trying to do online is hone our presentation with people's reaction in mind. Because it almost, more than what we say, it matters what people hear us saying. So we're always studying that. But my final thought is, the question said, was my reaction too strong? No, you can't help how you react. I think reactions come out of heaven or hell, and it just happens. Today, this morning, when I was in this beautiful location, we're here, it's Florida, and there was this beach, and there was sand, and I was just having all of these. I was even snorkeling off the beach there, which is my favorite activity by far. And I was in the water, and these little fish are like swimming around and talking to each other, and I was having all these distracting negative thoughts come in, and I had this sense of almost guilt, like I'm ruining this great snorkeling experience with all my head chatter, but that's not my fault. Your reaction, the things that come, if there's anything we learn from Swedenborg, it's that you're not responsible for what comes in. It's how we react afterwards. So I think anything that comes up, just like with the comment moderation, how if somebody comes in with an angry comment and we want to say, well, we're going to react to that with kindness and curiosity, you can do the same thing as, why am I having this reaction? What is this saying about what I believe? I think be gentle with yourself around it, because you can't help what comes in. It's how we react that shapes it. So those are a couple of thoughts I have based on all this stuff here. So thanks. Okay, now is there any questions like that was emailed to Tim by somebody who's here? Are there anything else that's on anyone's mind, either about right here?
Since I keep missing your Wednesdays, what time do you go live on Wednesdays?
It's a complicated answer to that question. No, 2:15 Eastern time. We have our live Q&A on Wednesdays. We do have a Monday night. At the last Monday of every month, we do a whole hour from 8 p.m. Eastern to 9:15. So we try to hit different time zones. We had a lot of people talking about how 8 p.m. is 2 a.m. in the UK, and they're still joining us. So we're trying to stagger those as best we can. But there's also some science to it, because YouTube will show you a little purple graph that tells you when the most of the people who are watching your channel are online. So we try to follow that as well when we're choosing things. But 2:15 is Wednesday. Good.
Other questions?
Any other questions or thoughts or comments? Yeah. Oh, okay. We'll get you next then.
Hi, Curtis. Tony Marzocco, first time, long time.
Thank you.
And I am a big fan of Curtis as a teacher. My personal experiences, I was raised Roman Catholic. I've had a lot of spiritual and metaphysical experiences, and some of them parallel very much with some of the stuff that I've learned, and some do not. Curtis and I and Karen have occasionally jokingly bumped heads on two items that I disagree with Swedenborg, but I mean, damn, 90% of the stuff is on point, okay? Case in point, and I had this discussion with a friend of mine. One of the concepts I could never get, I went to a Catholic school, was the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. I couldn't wrap my head around it. It's like, okay, so there's God, but then there's Jesus, who's his Son, and then there's this Holy Spirit. He's like third man in. I don't get it. You did a program that for the first time made sense to me as to how the Godhead works. And I talked to other people who were spiritually inclined and metaphysical and know more than I do, and they said it makes absolute sense. Can we prove any of this? Of course not. But you said God the Father is so abstract, so beyond the beyond of what we can wrap our heads around. It's just, you can't relate to it. But God, as a person in the form of Jesus Christ, is one of us, somebody we can relate to, we can understand. And then the confusion was always like, okay, Father and Son, I get that. And then where's this Holy Spirit? Is he a cousin from another wedding, or where? And then you said that the Holy Spirit is actually the actions that you see from Christ, from God. And for the first time, I didn't really have not so much a problem, but I just couldn't really understand the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit concept. I know people who sit back and say, well, I don't get the Son, okay? It's just God the Father, or I don't get the Holy Spirit. And that's, okay, that's their prerogative. That is one of the reasons, probably the primary reason why I enjoy watching Curtis and the crew, because they take such difficult concepts and they make them so easy to understand. And that's why I'm a big supporter of the Swedenborg Institute and Curtis. I'm a big fan. I always make comments. And I enjoy it. And I've learned a lot of my spiritual journey on the things that I want to do. And that's why I'm here. Like I said, I'm just a big fan, and I'm glad that you people showed up for it. And I don't have a question per se, because any of those occur usually during the individual programs that I watch. But it's wonderful, and I'm glad that people see this. It's non-denominational. It's not a particular spin or bent. Prior to getting involved in watching, say, Off the Left Eye, I would watch programs and read books on every possible religious philosophy, on Christianity, on Judaism, on Islam, on the Buddha, all kinds of esoteric religions, looking for the common threads, and I found a lot of them. And I found, of course, most religions have the rules and regulations, and they're mostly man-made, but whatever. But being a person who's trying to look a little bit more outside the box and to really it's more of an intelligent, intellectual approach to the Bible and to God. And that's why I'm a big fan of the program and the shows, and all I could say is Mazel Tov and Godspeed, continue doing well. He's a good teacher. His production crew, his brother, is a terrific IT guy. I had a conversation with him before, and I was saying, during the pandemic in the hospitality business where I work, we couldn't work. There was no money, nothing coming in, there was a lot of time. And I said, I'm going to devote my time and energy not to watching Judge Judy or complaining. I want to learn. And I threw myself into learning the business of social media. And along the way, I wound up watching programs like that. And as I just talked to his brother, I said, I'm a fan of a lot of other things that are not even spiritual, but I said, I like to watch the production qualities. There's a woman, I mentioned it before, you guys probably wouldn't know her. She's 26 years old. Her name is Leah. She goes by Sniper Wolf. She's the most watched English-speaking woman in the world. She's made so much money from YouTube, hint, hint, that she was able to buy a $6 million house in Summerlin, Nevada. But what I watched, and I looked at these views, and I'm seeing 20 million views, dear God, and something just comes out, and I'm looking at it, and I'm watching the production values that her boyfriend does for her. Cut, fast, moving right along, intelligent stuff, funny, witty, and that's the same sort of thing that I find with Curtis and his brother and the crew. It's good production, it's good sales of a product that we want to consume and want to buy. So that's pretty much my feeling about it, and that's why I'm here to support.
Excellent.
Thank you.
And doing that is welcome. If anybody just wants to talk about what brought them here and what they like about it, I think he was being overly generous about my teaching abilities, but I do get to work with a really skilled team that takes very seriously that task of it's not enough to have the message unless the impact is being made in the people who are watching. So we take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of study to produce content that we're hoping will capture attention, keep attention, and keep impact. And that's a moving target because the world, what worked even 10 years ago when we started, doesn't work the same way anymore. So we have to constantly try to stay ahead of things because we think Swedenborg's material deserves all the views in the world. And so we have to continue to figure out how do you make that happen. So good. Thank you so much for sharing a bit of what intrigues you about it. So good. Anybody else want to ask anything or say anything since we're all here? Oh, wait. Yeah, right here.
Hey, Curtis.
Hey.
About 5 years ago, I got interested in Swedenborg, but it started with his science. So I've read a lot on his science writings, Economy of the Animal Kingdom 1 and 2, Rational Psychology.
Can you put the mic just a little closer?
Okay, is that better?
That's good.
As you can see, I'm not used to using a mic. So my question for you, it might even be unanswerable, I'm not sure, but the question is this. When I read his science, I wonder how all of this science that he was involved in for so many years translated to or somehow led him to his theology.
Yeah.
Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, questions being unanswerable never stopped me before. The thing that's so cool about the Swedenborg story, and of particular interest to the world today, where you have a fixed chasm between the worlds of science and the worlds of spirituality and religion, is that Swedenborg doesn't represent an eschewing of science to go chase religion. It's not that he said, I've wasted my life learning anatomy and learning mineralogy and engineering, and now I'm going to the real study, which is the study of religion. Everything that he learned prior, he even says this at one point in one of his letters, was he felt like that was divine providence equipping him to be able to understand the spiritual world. And you see it coming through everywhere in his works. And there's plenty of scholars who know the details of this better than I do, but his system, he had an understanding of the idea of correspondences before he started applying that to the way that it shows up in the writings. He had, obviously, when he talks about the spiritual world and it interacting with the human body and the correspondence between the human form and the grand human of heaven, he'll constantly reference examples from his anatomical studies in there. He'll talk about how he'll use the terminology that was being used in his day, but he'll talk about how the chyle is moving through the mesentery, and all of those details helped him understand how the spiritual world works together. So the way I understand it, he couldn't have been who he was and couldn't have been able to capture as complete and complex a revelation as he did if he didn't have that foundation. And everything that he tells us about the spiritual world is about a world that is complex and structured just like the physical world is. And everything he tells us about the interrelation between the two is that they need each other, and it's not an arbitrary connection. So one of his most inspiring teachings is the idea that we need heaven to exist, but heaven needs us. That there's actually a need for human beings to be living and thinking the things we do and feeling the things we do. That provides this essential foundation for all the life above us. So it is with our understanding of both. He talks about the progression that we go through when we're regenerating. You have to, at first, learn how the world works. You have to build up a knowledge of external things. Without that, the spiritual couldn't rest on it. So I see his science was a piece of it. Even the material on the right and left brain and how they work, and that this was something that he was making breakthroughs that at the time weren't recognized as breakthroughs. They thought he was wrong, but now it was. Jonathan Rose was just saying to me the other day, Swedenborg was never as wrong as he was right when he published. That everything since then, all the advances we've had since then, have come to validate the things that he wrote. There was a scholar who came by the Swedenborg Library, which is on the campus close to where we are in Bernathen, who was talking about his breakthroughs in right and left brain and how they interact with our consciousness, and saying that Swedenborg seemed to have anticipated this stuff by several hundred years. So I think you can't pull those threads apart. And why should you? Why would we have this world that's so complex and interesting to learn about, if that knowledge wasn't useful in the pursuit of what's higher? And to me, I know that the more that I learn about the way the world works, the more inspiring it is for me. I'll talk about my snorkeling trip again this morning. It wasn't a trip. I just walked off the beach near this jetty. But I was looking at this little school of fish, and they were about this long, and they were mostly silver, had a little yellow on their fin. And because I have it's already a beautiful sight. The sun is rippling through the water and everything is peaceful and good. But because I had this knowledge of Swedenborg's correspondence and that fish are a symbol of ideas and as such people who are living by those ideas, I could just see in this little school of fish, like, this is a little picture of heaven. All these fish are swimming together. None of these are predatory to each other, and they're each they're darting into the current and getting what they need out of the current. And that because it's just a phytoplankton that's floating by. This is like the truth and the goodness that's coming from the Lord. And just for a second there, I thought, this is a picture of an individual's mind working well. This is a picture of heaven. And I think the fact I have some background in studying biology, I was doing that for a couple of years in college, I think that's made me able to understand his concept of correspondence is better. So I think the two get along really well. So hopefully that addresses what you were talking about. Okay, looks like we got one over there. Oh, sorry, I didn't see that you'd transferred. Okay.
Hand me the mic. So I'm John. A comment and then a thought maybe. A comment. I got great value out of the whole off the left eye portfolio of stuff. I'm a process guy, so I look for how does stuff work, and it's amazing. I call this Swedenborg recipe the how behind the scripture. Right? It's how does stuff actually work. I've learned that I need to meet people where they are. Right? So your whole idea earlier of don't react to an immediate comment. You got to kind of go where they are, learn where they are, see where they're struggling, and then figure out how to help them move forward. And what I've learned in the next phase for me is I've got a whole bunch of folks that are very mired in the sort of literal side of Scripture. So any way we can gain insight. Well, when the Scripture says this is what it's what it really means and how you can apply it. So. When I got through Jonathan Rose's portfolio of Bible studies, right, that little side portfolio Bible studies, powerful pool of opportunities for your channel if you want to probe in there for some opportunities.
Absolutely. And that Jonathan Rose's Bible study, Spirit and Life Bible study, is how I got connected to the Swedenborg Foundation. If anyone wants an origin story, I'll give it to you real quick. He was brought, Jonathan Rose, I'm sure everyone's familiar with him. If you're not, he's the series editor on the New Century Edition translation. Has had a huge impact on how I think about Swedenborg's writings and how I read and understand them. But he was doing a Bible study that I knew about because I knew his daughter Chelsea, who's also on our programs. And so I went there, and I didn't really know him well at the time, but I knew that what he was doing was really good, and people should hear it. So I said, hey, I can help you stream that better on the internet if you want. And I helped him with a couple things. I helped him do just a little bit of promotion on Facebook at the time, and it just so happened that Swedenborg Foundation was in need of someone who could help promote things on Facebook. And they said, oh, Curtis knows how to do that. So that's how I got my handhold in there. And the process that you mentioned of meeting people where they are and then figuring out what they need, that was what I was referencing earlier, reading the index of the doctrine of the section on charity in New Jerusalem. What it was talking about there was how the deepest, most complicated field of study for celestial or heavenly angels, as well as the most ancient people in the earliest, what Swedenborg calls church, so earliest spiritual era, was the complex study of how exactly to be charitable or kind to people in all the different states of life they go in. So it's exactly what you're talking about, that was rocket science back then, that there is enough complexity to know how do I hope I can remember the exact phrasing. He said that love to the neighbor is something that can occur in every little bit of every thought and action that you take. So if you had acquired all that wisdom, you could get it to where when I walk into this room, how I'm answering these questions, my conversations afterwards, what I say to Tim when we're driving back to the hotel, all of that can be done from charity in this incredibly particular way. And the way that you get honed in on that is to know more and more what exactly can help any individual person where they are. And this is unrelated, but the other thing that he said is that love of the neighbor is just to do what is right, fair, and honest in every situation, which I think that's great, because sometimes you hear love of the neighbor and think, well, I have to be thinking about somebody every second and how exactly I can help them and have them occupy my thoughts. But really, it's about loyalty to what's the right thing to do here. And how focusing on that seems like a reasonable thing to do every once in a while. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit.
Next question. Bob.
I've been curious. Did Swedenborg ever say anything about what God did before he created the universe, and where did he come from?
He says you can go crazy thinking about that.
And if you've answered this before, I'm sorry to bring it up again.
He really does say that it's don't think about what God did before existence. But this is what he says about it. You can't think about, he was having this, Swedenborg talks about, he was sitting there and trying to contemplate, he could get a concept of what to eternity meant. He could think of, from this moment out, there'll always be God, there'll always be people, but he couldn't get a concept of what does from eternity mean. So let's say that, we've got, let's say that God created the physical universe, and let's say it happened 13 billion years ago. Okay, but what about the year before? And what about a billion years before? Swedenborg was really struggling to have a picture of this. And he says that angels actually came to him and said, don't do that. And you can't think about it in terms of time. You have to think about it in terms of state. I'm not going to stand here and say that I understand exactly what that means. But there's something about, this is the same thing with when people will talk to us on their channel and say, I don't want to live forever. That seems intimidating, and when I try to think about that, I sort of feel claustrophobic, the idea of living forever. If you're thinking about an eternity of time, like you're trying to picture a trillion years, that can be a very overwhelming thing. But if you think about an eternity of state, meaning think about when you're happy and you're enjoying something, you have meaningful relationships, and you don't want it to end. That just the state of, I can't wait for tomorrow. That's an eternity of state. So somehow you can think of the idea of an eternity, God existing from eternity in terms of state. Like there's an eternal potential to want to create that we came out of. Like I said, I don't know exactly what it means, but that's a safer way to think about it. Right. Yes, especially not in my mind.
Other questions? Doug, here we go.
Yeah, Curtis, I occasionally say off the left eye to some other people that are on the spiritual path, and they go, so the negativity, where's that come from?
Why do they say that? They haven't seen it, or they just, when they watch it, they don't like it? Or?
They don't give me any evidence, but I don't know how to respond to it.
Do you mean to the name itself?
Yeah.
Okay, so off the left eye is a weird name, right? And it was intentionally weird and vague because long ago, imagine me thinking I'm going to tell YouTube about Swedenborg. And particularly YouTube, that at the time was very atheistic and combative towards religion, and I thought, how am I going to get people to listen to this material without them doing what you just said, which is, if I said, let's call this Swedenborg, people may not have an association, but if it was something about God or angels or something religious sounding, we didn't want a bunch of people to pass it by. So I thought, what's something that's almost like a band name or something that people don't have a prior association with that will make them curious. And so I decided to open up Swedenborg's Heaven and Hell. And I just started to look for phrases that I thought could make a YouTube channel from a blank slate. And there's a story that Swedenborg tells in Heaven and Hell, but also in Secrets of Heaven. There's a parallel passage there in the first volume where he's shown what the dying process is like. And at first, he's surrounded by heavenly angels who are taking care that no false ideas or evil impulses come near him. But as he starts to stir, he's surrounded by spiritual angels who, he says, it seemed as though a covering was peeled off my left eye, which gave me access to the sight of the Spirit. So in hindsight, it's about the intellectual awakening that truth can cause. We couldn't have it you couldn't have a channel that was off the right eye, because that's about your heart. And the only way to change your heart is for you to hear truths and take them into your own life. We could never change someone's heart. So off the left eye is about the concepts. There is, in general, an association with the left-hand path. There's like occult connections to it or something. So you're going to have some people who, and we get those comments from those people when they show up and say, are you associated with this? But what we're hoping to show is, right, when people come into it, that this is something much different. And I don't think that left needs to have a sinister association with it. I'm left-handed, and so maybe we're making a little progress back for that. But really what we want to do is have people have the correct association with things. So the left side is the intellectual side, the right side is the love side, and this is really in the order of generation there. We've gone back and forth, is it the right name? Should we change it? And it's a hard call to make on something like that. It's got enough momentum with it now. I never dreamed when I was flipping through that book that it would really matter what I named it, because we weren't planning to get this far. So for better or worse, it's off the left eye. And we're experimenting with different projects with some different names on them. We're always, as I said, probing and what works and what doesn't work. Which keyword is stronger? Is Swedenborg stronger as a keyword than off the left eye? That's why we actually named our show Swedenborg in Life. When we used to do this program, we'd always have a tag on it that said Swedenborg in Life, so that if somebody searched Swedenborg on YouTube, our things would come up first, because we wanted to tie to that keyword. So yes, you're never going to please everybody. We've certainly gotten some of those, but we've also had a lot of other people who say that they love the name because they don't forget it. And that's often half of the battle, is trying to get something to stand out and intrigue people enough. So it's here, and we're making the best we can with it. So yes.
I just want to thank you for all the work that you do, all of you. It's been life-changing for me with every breath I take. But I just want to respond to that. I think Off the Left Eye has the best chance of making Swedenborg go mainstream because of how it's presented.
Could you put that
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Better, yeah. So I think that Off the Left Eye has the best chance of making Swedenborg go more mainstream because of the way it's presented. But I have a little question.
Sure.
Outside of that was Swedenborg a churchgoer? Did he go to church every week? I kind of like the idea that it's not kind of, related to all the dogma of church. Did he go to church? Or is it okay that I don't go to church?
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna say that's okay. Swedenborg is such an interesting intersection of things, where he is absolutely this intersection of religion and, I guess you would call free form spirituality, where he has a lot of religious background. I don't know if I've ever heard what his Sunday habits were or not. I'm assuming he would go. That this is at a time when the government was a Christian government, and I'm sure that he would have paid a big price socially for not going. His father was a Lutheran bishop, so he had that running in the family, and he stuck to a lot of those principles and treasured them. On the other hand, his works were put on trial because they were heretical. They were saying things like, you don't have to be a Christian to go to heaven, which was not okay at the time. And there were so many things, the statements that he makes, even as he makes them with very Christian language are so broad and inclusive and universal is the word that I'm looking for. That this is describing something that goes on in the hearts and minds of every person who's trying to live a good life. We just shot a short video while I was here, which is about conscience and how conscience is formed. So conscience is like Jiminy Cricket, but as with everything with Swedenborg, it's deeper than that concept. But this is your sense of right and wrong, and that's a really important tool in regeneration. And he says how that is formed is by whatever religious tradition you're in, which ideas from that tradition do you take to heart, and how deeply do you take them to heart? It's really about our reaction to the ideas and then what the ideas were. So even though he said that some of the most powerful truths resided in the Christian tradition, he also quite often talks about how in his day, it was more difficult for people of a Christian background to get into heaven than non-Christians, because there were so many ideas that were pulling people away from the joining of faith and love, which is the thing that forms conscience and saves. So I like Swedenborg's definition of what's the core unit of the church. The church occurs inside each individual. He talks about organized religions can be a gathering of individual churches, but the church is inside each of us. He says that when you live a life of charity or of caring, you are at prayer. You're constantly at prayer, if not with your mouth, then with your heart. I think that's a direct quote. So I would say that more important than if you go to church is how's the church doing inside of you? One last thing I want to say, then I'll take your follow-up question, is the concept of piety. So in his doctrine of life, there is a thing he calls piety, and piety is the external observance of religion. So piety is doing things that you would normally associate with church, like going to church, taking sacraments, doing prayers. Piety can be a great companion to the stuff that's in your heart and mind, to charity and faith, which live inside you. But piety isn't worth anything on its own. If you go to all the religious services that you can, and you do follow all the right rules, if you don't have charity and faith, it's empty. It doesn't mean anything. So if you had to take one, it's more important. That's what the nature of your spiritual life is the charity and faith inside you. Piety can be a great add-on, but it's not the most important thing, and it can lead astray if you think, oh, well, I went to church, now I can honk at this guy as much as I want. So did you have a follow-up?
I think that resonates with, that resonates with young people, that, the church has done wrong, and they want answers for that. And I think his message being, the universality of it, and thinking more critical thinking about, what was going on
Right.
with the church, and not just defending something just for the sake of defending it. I just think that would, resonate well with, all the young people that are leaving the church. And again, Off the Left Eye seems to be sort of a wonderful way of them relating to all of that and the way you present it. So thank you again.
Thank you. I think what young people and old people are looking for is just what we said about what charity is, which is to do what's right, honest, and fair in this situation, that's love. And if people see religious institutions doing things that they do not believe are right, honest, and fair, that I think that their freedom recoils at that and says that you can tell on an instinctive level that the behavior we're seeing does not reflect the character of God. So that creates a dichotomy in people's minds that they'll often say, well, that just means there must be nothing to religion, because they feel the dissonance of that and so distance themselves from the whole thing. So I think it's critical to show that it's not, you can't just say, well, because I am the church, therefore whatever I do is charitable. No, the charitable is what is right, honest, and fair from the Lord in every situation. And the more that we follow that, the more we then can become part of the Lord's church, which encompasses every individual who's living that way.
You've given us so many wonderful things to think about this afternoon, and I do thank you for them. I do wonder, though, whether I understood you to say way back at the beginning that purple rats tell you how many people are watching your show.
The purple rats. So I have pet rats, and purple graphs. Graphs. So they're just little bar charts. Yes. No. There are labor laws that do not let us employ purple rats. So, sorry. I bet we're getting close to the end of our time here, so I may wrap up, Tim, if we want to do some interviews or anything, or
Yeah, so there's more questions too, so we can also answer your questions even individually as well. There's food over in the side. Please help yourself to some food. There's drink in the back. If anyone is interested and willing to be interviewed, we're going to be doing that in a little room around the side. But by all means, we're not done yet. But we're going to be doing a raffle in a few minutes too, about some items that we'd love to hope the number of you will win. So